Cartoons from the 1990s looked bright, playful, and completely harmless. Kids laughed at talking animals, strange heroes, and silly adventures every Saturday morning. Yet hidden beneath those colorful worlds were disturbing ideas that most young viewers never understood. Dark symbolism, strange theories, and emotional truths were quietly woven into the stories. Today we uncover 12 disturbing details in 90s cartoons that you were probably far too young to notice. Number 12. SpongeBob's Bikini. Bottom may be nuclear fallout. 1999. When children first watched SpongeBob SquarePants, the world of Bikini Bottom looked like pure nonsense comedy. Talking sea creatures lived in pineapple houses. A crab ran a burger restaurant. A sponge flipped patties with joyful energy. Nothing about the show appeared serious. And yet beneath the bright colors there sits a quiet detail that many viewers never noticed until years later. The city of Bikini Bottom is located directly beneath Bikini Atoll in the Pacific Ocean. That name is not fictional. Bikini Atoll is one of the most infamous nuclear testing sites in human history. During the 1940s and 1950s, dozens of atomic bombs were detonated above the water there. Entire islands were evacuated, and radiation altered the ecosystem for decades. When older viewers connect those two facts, the cartoon begins to look very different. Suddenly, the strange mutations in Bikini Bottom seem less random. A sponge that speaks. A squirrel living underwater inside a glass dome. A crab obsessed with money. A squid who hates his life. All of them behave like distorted reflections of normal creatures. And if the setting itself hides a disturbing origin story, then the cartoons that follow might be hiding darker truths as well. Number 11. The environmental collapse in Captain Planet. 1990. During the 1990s, Captain Planet and the Planeteers looked like a simple superhero cartoon about saving the environment. 5 teenagers from around the world controlled elemental powers. When danger appeared, they summoned a blue-skinned hero who punished polluters and restored balance to the planet. To children, the message seemed clear and optimistic. Yet watching the series again as an adult reveals something far more troubling. Nearly every episode of the show depicts a world that is already collapsing. Rivers are poisoned by chemical waste. Forests vanish under chainsaws. Entire communities suffer under corporate greed. And the villains are not alien monsters or cartoon criminals. They are businessmen dumping toxic sludge into lakes. They are industrial leaders poisoning cities for profit. What makes the show disturbing is how realistic those scenarios are. Captain Planet does not fight imaginary threats. He fights environmental disasters that mirror real events happening around the world. Oil spills, acid rain, deforestation, nuclear contamination. The implication hidden in many episodes is that the world of the cartoon may already be beyond saving. The Planeteers are constantly reacting to damage that has already happened. Factories continue polluting. Corporations keep destroying ecosystems. Captain Planet appears only temporarily before vanishing again. For a children's show, the message becomes unexpectedly bleak. Humanity is not slowly harming the Earth. Humanity is actively destroying it, while heroes desperately try to delay the consequences. And that sense of quiet despair only deepens when we move to the next cartoon on the list. Number 10. Johnny Bravo's Creepy Behavior. 1997. At first glance, Johnny Bravo looked like the most harmless cartoon hero imaginable. A muscular man with sunglasses walked through bright sunny streets while confidently talking to every woman he saw. Each episode repeated the same joke. Johnny approached someone with exaggerated charm. Seconds later, he was slapped, rejected, or humiliated. Children watching the show usually laughed at the slapstick. Johnny seemed like a harmless fool whose ego constantly betrayed him. But watching the series again as an adult reveals something much more uncomfortable hidden beneath the comedy. Johnny does not simply flirt, he invades personal space. He ignores rejection. He assumes every woman he meets should immediately admire him. When they refuse, he often reacts with confusion rather than self-reflection. The show repeatedly highlights how disconnected he is from reality. This behavior begins to resemble a satire of toxic masculinity long before that phrase became common. Johnny believes confidence alone entitles him to affection. His exaggerated arrogance exposes how absurd that mindset truly is. The creators appear to be mocking a specific type of personality rather than celebrating it. Each rejection becomes a lesson that Johnny never learns. The audience understands the message even when the character does not. For younger viewers, it looked like simple slapstick comedy. For adults, it becomes social commentary hiding inside a cartoon about a man with giant hair and impossible confidence. And compared to the emotional darkness waiting inside the next cartoon, this example almost feels lighthearted. Number 9. The Hidden War Trauma in Animaniacs, 1993. Animaniacs exploded onto television screens with pure chaotic energy. Yakko, Wacko, and Dot ran through Hollywood creating songs, jokes, and outrageous sketches. The show moved so quickly that children barely had time to process one gag before the next appeared. But hidden within that humor were references that pointed toward far darker subjects. One famous musical segment lists world leaders from across the globe. The song feels educational and playful, yet several names belong to dictators whose regimes caused enormous suffering. The rhythm moves so quickly that most children never recognize what they are hearing. Throughout the series, the writers insert subtle references to war propaganda, censorship, and global politics. Characters casually mention historical figures whose stories involve conflict and tragedy. These jokes pass unnoticed by younger viewers who only hear the playful tone. Adults watching the show later begin to recognize the deeper layer of commentary. Animaniacs was not simply a children's cartoon filled with random comedy. It was a sharp satire that used humor to reference the darker chapters of world history. The creators trusted that children would laugh at the surface while older audiences would understand the hidden meaning. The result is a show that operates on two completely different levels at the same time, one playful and chaotic, the other quietly reminding viewers of the darker forces that shape the modern world. And if those historical references feel unsettling, the next cartoon reveals something even more disturbing: a childhood bully who was actually hiding heartbreaking loneliness. Number 8. Helga's Home Life Was Emotional Neglect, 1996. Hey, Arnold appeared to be one of the warmest cartoons of the 1990s. The show focused on childhood friendships, neighborhood adventures, and the quiet struggles of growing up in a crowded city. Arnold himself was calm, thoughtful, and endlessly kind to everyone around him. But one character carried a story that becomes painful once viewers understand it. Helga Pataki spends most of the series acting like the school bully. She insults Arnold constantly and treats other students with open hostility. To children watching the show, she looked like a classic cartoon antagonist whose personality existed only for comedy. Yet the truth behind her behavior slowly appears through moments inside her home. Helga's father rarely pays attention to her. His conversations often revolve around failed business ideas and self-centered complaints. Her mother spends long stretches exhausted and emotionally absent, drifting through daily life without noticing her daughter. Kind words almost never appear in their household. Helga responds by building emotional walls around herself. She hides her affection for Arnold behind cruelty because genuine vulnerability would expose how lonely she feels. In secret, she writes poetry and keeps a shrine dedicated to the boy she truly admires. Those hidden moments transform the character entirely. Helga is not simply a bully. She is a neglected child desperately searching for affection in a home where love rarely appears. Once viewers recognize that truth, every scene involving her becomes heartbreaking. Number 7. Batman's villains were mentally broken, 1992. Batman. The animated series changed what audiences expected from animated storytelling. Its dark architecture, towering shadows, and haunting music created a world unlike anything else on children's television. But the true darkness of the show lived inside its villains. Unlike typical cartoon criminals, these characters were not simply evil for entertainment. Many of them were tragic figures destroyed by trauma long before Batman ever confronted them. Harvey Dent begins as a respected district attorney before a horrific accident scars half his face and fractures his sanity. The result is Two-Face, a man who relies on a coin flip because his mind can no longer decide between right and wrong. Mr. Freeze starts as a scientist trying to save his dying wife from a fatal illness. When an accident traps him inside a frozen suit, his grief transforms into obsession and revenge. These stories feel less like superhero battles and more like psychological tragedies. Batman rarely celebrates victory because defeating these villains does not heal the damage that created them. Arkham Asylum becomes a place filled with shattered minds rather than simple criminals. For children, the show delivered thrilling action and mysterious villains. For adults, it becomes something deeper, a study of how trauma, grief, and obsession can destroy a human life. Number 6. Courage's owners may already be dead. 1999. At first glance, Courage the Cowardly Dog feels like a strange comedy about a frightened pet protecting his owners from monsters. The formula seems simple. Courage sees something terrifying. Muriel remains sweet and trusting. Eustace grumbles and insults everyone. By the end of the episode, the danger disappears and the quiet farmhouse returns to normal. But the location of the story immediately raises a disturbing question. The house sits in a place called nowhere. It is not a small town. It is not a rural community. It is a lonely farmhouse surrounded by endless empty land that stretches toward the horizon. No neighbors appear. No nearby cities exist. The outside world rarely enters the story. This isolation has inspired one of the most unsettling theories about any children's cartoon. Some viewers believe the farmhouse may exist in a kind of spiritual limbo between life and death. The desert landscape resembles an empty purgatory where lost souls drift without direction. Strange supernatural visitors appear constantly as if crossing invisible boundaries between worlds. Ghosts, demons, cursed spirits, and mysterious travelers enter the house without explanation. Muriel often welcomes them kindly, while Eustace reacts with hostility or fear. Courage is the only character who recognizes how dangerous these visitors truly are. And in this interpretation, Courage is not simply protecting a house. He is protecting the souls of his owners from forces attempting to pull them into the unknown. The idea becomes even more disturbing when considering the personalities of the characters. Muriel represents kindness and compassion. Eustace embodies bitterness and cruelty. Courage stands between them as a loyal protector, struggling against fear itself. Whether the theory is true or not, the atmosphere of the show constantly feels dreamlike and uneasy. The desert never changes. The house never leaves its strange isolation. It feels less like a home and more like a waiting place between two worlds. Number 5. Ren and Stimpy's Dark Psychological Abuse, 1991. The Ren and Stimpy show exploded onto television with animation that looked completely different from anything audiences had seen before. Characters stretched into grotesque shapes, faces twisted into exaggerated expressions, entire scenes transformed into surreal close-ups filled with disturbing detail. Children laughed at the absurd chaos. The show felt rebellious and unpredictable. But beneath the wild humor lies a relationship that becomes deeply disturbing when examined closely. Ren is an unstable chihuahua whose personality swings violently between arrogance and explosive rage. Stimpy is a slow, naive cat who remains endlessly loyal to his friend no matter how cruel Ren becomes. The imbalance between them forms the heart of the show. Ren constantly insults Stimpy. He humiliates him publicly. He physically attacks him in moments of uncontrollable anger. In many episodes, Ren's frustration grows until he erupts into a screaming meltdown that borders on madness. Stimpy rarely fights back. Instead, he forgives Ren immediately and returns to the same cycle of loyalty and abuse. What children once interpreted as slapstick comedy begins to resemble something far more disturbing. The relationship mirrors real patterns of emotional manipulation, where one person dominates another through fear and instability. Ren often behaves like a character trapped inside his own psychological breakdown. His paranoia intensifies with every episode. His anger escalates without warning. Yet Stimpy remains by his side despite everything. The show never resolves this dynamic. There is no moment of growth where Ren learns empathy. The abuse simply repeats in new forms each time the story begins again. That endless cycle leaves viewers with an uncomfortable realization. Beneath the loud jokes and bizarre animation lies a portrait of a deeply toxic relationship disguised as cartoon comedy. Number 4. The Post-Apocalyptic World of the Powerpuff Girls, 1998. The Powerpuff Girls appear to live in a cheerful city filled with bright buildings, smiling citizens, and colorful chaos. Professor Utonium accidentally creates 3 tiny superheroes while experimenting in his laboratory. Blossom Bubbles and Buttercup then dedicate their lives to protecting Townsville from villains. On the surface, the show feels playful and lighthearted. Yet the origin story itself contains a detail that becomes unsettling once viewers think about it. The girls were not born through ordinary means. They were created through a chemical experiment involving a mysterious substance called Chemical X. The compound instantly produces living beings with enormous strength flight abilities and supernatural powers. The question that quietly lingers in the background is simple. What exactly is Chemical X? The show never explains its origin. It behaves like an unstable element capable of altering biology instantly. In several episodes, the substance mutates creatures into strange monsters or transforms ordinary objects into living beings. When viewers examine the world of Townsville more closely, the environment itself begins to look unusual. The city constantly faces attacks from mutated villains, bizarre creatures, and gigantic monsters that appear without explanation. Some enemies resemble distorted versions of humans, while others look like living experiments that escaped from unknown laboratories. The frequency of these threats suggests a world where scientific experimentation may have already reshaped reality. Some fan theories propose that Townsville may exist after a catastrophic period of uncontrolled science where chemicals altered both people and animals. The Powerpuff Girls might be the most successful result of those experiments, while many villains represent the dangerous failures. In that interpretation, the cheerful battles between heroes and villains hide a darker background story about a world changed by reckless experimentation. The colorful city becomes something else entirely. A place where science has already pushed nature beyond its limits, and where the consequences are still appearing in the form of strange enemies and unpredictable chaos. Number 3. The Grim Fate of Dinosaurs in the Land Before Time series. 1994. The Land Before Time television series appears to be one of the most innocent cartoons of the 1990s. Young dinosaurs explore forests, valleys, and rivers while learning lessons about friendship, loyalty, and courage. Each episode follows Littlefoot Sarah, Ducky Petrie, and Spike as they wander through the beautiful landscape of the Great Valley. To a child, the world looks peaceful and magical. But the moment an adult thinks about the setting, a far darker truth appears. These characters live in the final age of the dinosaurs. Every adventure, every happy moment, every playful journey takes place in a world that is already moving toward extinction. The young heroes may not understand it, but the audience does. Millions of years ago, a catastrophic event, wiped out nearly every dinosaur species on Earth. Scientists believe an asteroid impact caused massive environmental collapse. Entire ecosystems disappeared. The skies darkened, and the planet changed forever. That future hangs invisibly over every moment of the series. Even within the show itself, the dinosaurs constantly struggle to survive natural disasters. Earthquakes split the land apart. Drought threatens the food supply. Predators stalk the forests, searching for vulnerable prey. The characters spend much of their time searching for safe places where life can continue. The Great Valley becomes a symbol of fragile survival. What makes the story emotionally powerful is that the young dinosaurs never realize the full scale of their fate. They continue exploring the world with optimism and curiosity, while the audience understands something they do not. Their species will eventually disappear from the planet entirely. This knowledge transforms the cheerful adventures into quiet tragedy. The friendships feel more meaningful. The victories feel temporary. Every moment of happiness exists in a world that will one day vanish. For children, the show tells a hopeful story about courage and loyalty. For adults, it becomes something deeper, a reminder that life itself can be fragile, even in the most beautiful places. Number 2, Rocco's Job, was actually an adult hotline, 1993. Rocco's modern life always felt strange compared with other cartoons of the 1990s. The world looked familiar at first glance, but the humor constantly pushed into uncomfortable territory. Everyday situations quickly turned bizarre, while strange neighbors and awkward misunderstandings surrounded the main character. Rocco himself seemed like an ordinary individual trying to survive the chaos of modern society. One detail that many younger viewers completely missed involves his job. Rocco works at a company with the confusing name Kind of a Lotto Comics. The office environment looks normal on the surface. Employees wear headsets and answer telephones while sitting in cubicles. Customers call in throughout the day asking for services. But several visual hints suggest the business is not selling comic books at all. The callers often speak in flirtatious voices. Some conversations include awkward pauses or embarrassed reactions from Rocco. Posters and decorations inside the office contain suggestive jokes hidden behind innocent wording. Adult viewers quickly recognize what the cartoon implies. Rocco is likely working at a phone service designed for adult conversations. The writers cleverly disguised the concept using wordplay and subtle hints so the show could still air on children's television. Kids simply saw a strange office job where Rocco answered phones. Adults understood that the humor was referencing something far more mature. This hidden layer of meaning appears repeatedly throughout the series. Rocco's modern life constantly slips adult satire into scenes that appear harmless at first glance. The show quietly comments on consumer culture, awkward relationships, and embarrassing social situations. Once viewers recognize the joke about Rocco's workplace, the cartoon suddenly feels different. A character who seemed innocent spends his entire workday dealing with callers who were never meant to exist in a children's cartoon. The scene becomes funny and uncomfortable at the same time, and if that revelation feels strange, the final entry on this list reveals a cartoon world where fear itself might be protecting something much more mysterious. Number 1. Ed, and Eddy's World may be a dead-end reality. 1999. At first glance, Ed, and Eddy looks like one of the simplest cartoons of the 1990s. 3 boys chase money for jawbreakers, build ridiculous scams, and get chased by neighborhood kids when everything falls apart. The cul-de-sac feels like a normal suburban setting filled with exaggerated personalities and harmless chaos. But the deeper you look, the stranger that world becomes. Adults are almost completely absent. Parents are mentioned, but they are never seen. The children appear to live alone, navigating life without supervision, guidance, or any visible connection to a larger society. Streets stretch outward, yet no real outside world ever seems to exist. No schools are shown. No functioning community appears beyond the small group of kids trapped inside that neighborhood. Then there's the environment itself. The sky often looks unnatural. Backgrounds feel empty and disconnected. The layout of the cul-de-sac seems isolated, almost like a closed system cut off from reality. Time feels suspended. Days repeat without progress. Nothing truly changes, no matter how many schemes fail. This has led to one of the darkest interpretations of any cartoon setting. Some viewers believe the children in Ed, and Eddy are not living in a normal world at all. Instead, they may exist in a kind of limbo, each character representing different time periods, personalities, or unresolved lives. Their exaggerated traits begin to feel less like comedy and more like distorted identities frozen in place. Even the characters themselves show signs of deeper instability. Ed lives in a state of near-constant confusion, disconnected from reality. Ed desperately tries to impose order on a world that never follows rules. Eddy chases success and approval, but is driven by insecurity he can never escape. The other children reflect similar patterns: anger, isolation, obsession, or emotional detachment. No one truly grows, no one leaves, no one escapes. What once looked like a loud, colorful comedy begins to feel like something far more unsettling. A closed world where characters are trapped in endless repetition, unable to move forward. And suddenly, the laughter feels different. Because the biggest question is no longer about their scams or their failures. It's this: why does no one ever get out? Cartoons often reveal their real meaning years later. What once felt funny or harmless can suddenly look darker when viewed with adult eyes. These hidden details remind us that animation sometimes tells deeper stories than we realize. Which disturbing cartoon moment surprised you the most? Share your thoughts below and keep watching closely.